From monumental blunders to catastrophic mishaps, history is full of failures that shaped the world in unexpected ways. Some were the result of bad decisions, while others were simply born of hubris or timing. Today, we're counting down the top 10 biggest failures in history, mistakes so monumental they're impossible to forget. Let's dive in. In 1937, the LZ-129 Hindenburg, a luxurious German passenger airship, was supposed to revolutionize air travel. The massive, helium-filled dirigible was the epitome of luxury, able to carry 72 passengers across the Atlantic in style. But on May 6, 1937, as it was attempting to dock in Lakehurst, New Jersey, disaster struck. A fire broke out, and the Hindenburg, despite being a technological marvel, was consumed by flames in just 37 seconds, killing 36 people. It's one of the most infamous failures in aviation history, not only because of the loss of life, but because it forever damaged the reputation of airships as a safe mode of transportation. Though it's unclear what caused the fire, whether it was a static spark or something else, it marked the end of an era for airships. The Hindenburg's fiery demise killed the dream of passenger airships and paved the way for the dominance of airplanes in commercial flight. Back in 1957, Ford unleashed what was supposed to be the future of automobiles, the Ford Edsel. Promoted as a breakthrough in car design, it was named after Henry Ford's son, Edsel Ford. The car was meant to compete with the likes of Chevrolet and Chrysler, but it became one of the biggest flops in automotive history. Why? Well, despite the flashy ads and the promise of innovation, the Edsel was poorly received for several reasons: overpriced, bad timing, and an overcomplicated design. The car also suffered from mechanical problems and had an awkward, unattractive design. Ford produced over 100,000 Edsels in its first year, but by 1960 production had ended, and the car became synonymous with failure in the auto industry. Sometimes the greatest failures are the ones that happen despite the loudest promises of success. The RMS Titanic, touted as unsinkable, sank on its maiden voyage in 1912 after hitting an iceberg in the North Atlantic. The loss of over 1,500 lives is tragic, but it also marked a historic failure in engineering, communication, and safety. While the Titanic was equipped with state-of-the-art luxury and safety features, it had far too few lifeboats for the number of passengers. To make matters worse, the ship's designers and crew ignored iceberg warnings, and the ship's speed was not reduced even when approaching dangerous waters. The disaster led to changes in maritime laws, including the requirement for enough lifeboats for everyone on board. But the Titanic's failure still echoes as one of the most infamous in history. Imagine being sent into battle with a clear mission, only to find out you were given the wrong orders. That's exactly what happened during the charge of the Light Brigade at the Battle of Balaclava in 1854, during the Crimean War. Commanded to advance towards Russian artillery, the Light Brigade of British cavalry mistakenly charged directly at enemy cannons due to miscommunication. In less than 20 minutes they lost over 600 men, most of them in an utterly futile charge against heavily fortified artillery positions. While the charge was heroically carried out, the mission was a complete failure. The phrase, "the charge of the Light Brigade," remains synonymous with tragic miscommunication and military blunders. Think back to 1985. Coca-Cola, the world's most popular soda, decided to shake things up by changing its formula. Enter New Coke, a sweeter version of the original. The idea was simple: compete with Pepsi by creating a more modern and palatable version of the iconic drink. Well, not so simple. The backlash was immediate and severe. Fans of the original Coke were outraged and sales plummeted. Coca-Cola was forced to bring back the classic formula within just 79 days. While it's often considered one of the most famous marketing failures, the whole debacle actually became a masterclass in brand loyalty and consumer sentiment. Napoleon Bonaparte, one of history's greatest military tacticians, suffered one of the biggest failures of his career when he invaded Russia in 1812. What seemed like a brilliant strategy to expand his empire turned into a catastrophic disaster. Napoleon's massive army, over 600,000 men strong, was ill-prepared for the brutal Russian winter. The Russians, employing a scorched earth policy, burned their own villages, leaving the French with no resources. As temperatures plummeted, disease, starvation, and constant skirmishes decimated Napoleon's forces. By the time he retreated, fewer than 100,000 men remained. This failure marked the beginning of the end for Napoleon's empire. While the fall of the Berlin Wall in 1989 is often remembered as a symbol of the triumph of freedom, it was also a massive political failure by the East German government. The wall, which had separated families for nearly 3 decades, was meant to be a permanent barrier between East and West Germany. But when the East German government, under immense pressure from protesters, announced that citizens could cross the border, they accidentally triggered the collapse of the entire system. People stormed the border crossings, and within hours, the wall that symbolized division was no more. It was a monumental failure of political control, but also the start of a new era in Germany and Europe. January 28, 1986 began like any other day at NASA's Kennedy Space Center. But as the Space Shuttle Challenger lifted off, a catastrophic failure occurred just 73 seconds into its flight. The shuttle broke apart due to a faulty O-ring in one of its solid rocket boosters, causing an explosion that killed all 7 astronauts on board, including Krista McAuliffe, a teacher selected to be the first civilian in space. This failure led to a complete redesign of NASA's Space Shuttle program and put the future of the space agency into question for years. In 1961, the United States attempted a covert operation to overthrow Cuba's communist regime under Fidel Castro. The Bay of Pigs invasion was supposed to be a swift and decisive military action, but it quickly turned into an embarrassing disaster. Trained Cuban exiles, supported by the CIA, landed on the beaches of Cuba, but due to poor planning, a lack of air support, and unforeseen resistance from Castro's forces, the invasion was swiftly crushed. The failure not only humiliated the US government, but also strengthened Castro's grip on power and his alliance with the Soviet Union during the Cold War. Finally, we reach one of the most iconic failures in world history: the fall of the Roman Empire. Spanning centuries of glory, the Roman Empire dominated the known world. But after years of internal strife, corruption, and external invasions, it collapsed in 476 AD, marking the end of ancient Rome's power. From political instability to economic decline, Rome's downfall was a gradual process, but it was a monumental failure on a massive scale. Its fall led to the Dark Ages in Europe and reshaped the future of Western civilization. History is full of failures, but it's these very mistakes that have shaped the world we live in today. From colossal blunders to tragic errors in judgment, these failures serve as harsh reminders that even the greatest plans can go awry. Which failure surprised you the most? Or is there another monumental failure from history you think deserves a place on this list? Let us know in the comments below. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more top 10s.